Hi, I'm Robin Takacs, and I'm making my Love Liberally presentation, so I hope you enjoy it. I did change the name of my presentation to from talking about the demise of interpersonal communication, and so I hope that I'm being a little bit more positive and not as pessimistic by changing it to just the impact of texting on interpersonal communication. So to explain communication in general, we have a very, very basic model. And you have a sender of a message, and they send that message to a receiver, and the receiver sends feedback. And both the message and feedback are verbal and nonverbal. But in interpersonal communication, it does get a little bit more complex. And today what I'm going to be talking about is what channel that message is going through. So after a sender encodes a message with words and symbols, they send the message over a channel, and the receiver at the other end has to decode that message and make meaning out of it. Now, noise, or the lightning bolt here in the diagram, is anything that interferes with a message getting from a sender to a receiver. And when we talk about the multiple channels for interpersonal communication, you can see this wheel here is full of all kinds of ideas, from phone to email to instant messaging, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the internet, etc. And a lot of these channels also have both verbal and nonverbal components to them. So we know college-age students love their mobile data. So we know that from this chart that says the 18 to 26-year-old college students are using 45% of the data out there. So that's almost half of all the data is being used by your age group. And while we see the averages here for teens in terms of text messaging and versus face-to-face communication with friends on a daily basis, while the average is 54%, the 17-year-olds are actually the high end, right? They're 77% of their messages is done through texting for 17-year-olds. And I would presume that that would go up for college students, whereas 17-year-olds say that only a third, 34% of their communication to friends on a daily basis is face-to-face. So let's just assume that texting is second nature to most college students. It seems to be their preferred form of communication. And texting allows us a whole unique language for communication of not only words, but symbols and abbreviations for things that make the message brief and to the point, and we speak in these little acronyms or these symbols or abbreviations, and it makes the text message shorter and easier to communicate. But in communication theory, we have also found that nonverbal messages are actually stronger than verbal messages. So if I'm saying yes, but I'm shaking my head no, we have found that the brain processes what they see. So even though I verbally said yes, the communication was processed as a no. And why is this important? Because there are 9 categories of nonverbal communication, believe it or not. So the first is artifacts. And artifacts are anything that is man-made. So that could be clothing, jewelry, stationery, logos that are on clothing. Anything that is man-made can send a nonverbal message. The next category is chronemics, and that's all about time. So whether you glance at your watch while you're talking to someone or glance at your cell phone to see the time, that's definitely sending a message that you're concerned about time. Punctuality sends a message. So that's all about timeliness. Haptics. So haptics is all about touch, and good touch and bad touch. So there are something like a firm handshake sends a message. That's before COVID. Or a pat on the back for a job well done sends a message. But there can also be touch between two people that makes us feel uncomfortable if that touch is unwanted. And that's all about haptics. Kinesics and kinesiology is about movement and motion of the human body, right? So kinesics is about the body in motion. So we can give someone a thumbs up or point my finger at them, or it could be excessive pacing or excessive movement instead of being able to stand still. And that can send a message. Nonverbal one. Oculesics, eye contact. Eye contact is a very strong communicator. Direct eye contact indicates that we're engaged and we're listening and we're attentive. Whereas when you can't make direct eye contact, that sends all kinds of other messages that you're preoccupied or you're thinking about something else, or when you avert your eyes and don't look people directly in the face, they say sometimes it indicates truthfulness. Olfactics, this is all about the sense of smell. And this can be good or bad smells. So an offensive smell might be about body odor, bad breath, smelly feet. But it also could be the odor of cigarette smoke that's on your clothing. And too much of a good thing can be olfactics too. If you've ever gotten into an elevator with someone and the doors close and they have on too much perfume or they have on too much cologne, that also sends a message. Physical characteristics. Unfortunately, we tend to judge people by physical characteristics. So that might be height or weight or complexion or color of hair. These all send messages to people, and it might impact the message that you're sending verbally. Paralanguage is really important because it is a very strong nonverbal category, and this has to do with things like rate of speed of your speech, or an accent, or the way you pronounce certain words, or it could indicate stress or importance or anger if you raise your voice and you're yelling at people. So paralanguage can be a very, very strong nonverbal component. And the last one is proxemics. So proxemics is all about space and the space that that message sends. So in a face-to-face environment where our physical bubble that we're usually comfortable with is 2 to 3 feet of space between you and someone else. And if someone invades your space, you have a tendency to withdraw or back up if you're not comfortable with that person, or they're not a close friend or someone you're in a relationship with. However, proxemics also has to do not only with physical distance, which has been distorted again because of COVID, but it also sends a message about how comfortable you are with others, being in your personal space. So in a face-to-face environment, interpersonally or in small groups, eye contact is really important. And because you have the opportunity for all 9 of these categories to exist in a face-to-face communication, it's what we call a media-rich communication. So you can have all of those inputs and all of those 9 nonverbal elements in a face-to-face environment. Now, when it comes to texting, chronemics definitely comes into the picture, because there's a sense of urgency when you send a text to message. Like, this is so important, I have to text you right now. And when you get it, you have to open it right now and you have to respond right now. There's this urgency or immediacy that's expected. And if you read a text message from a day ago, it's no longer timely, right? It doesn't even apply sometimes. Permanence is very, very important to talk about as well, because even though you delete the text message from your device, it still exists. And if you've ever watched any kind of a crime show or crime story or read a book about a murder mystery, even though text messages are deleted, they can still be accessed by law enforcement to see what was texted between these people and the times and the dates and what was said. So it's an extremely permanent message. And you can't have all 9 of these categories of nonverbal communication in a text message. You can add little emoticons or little symbols that you think make the communication a little bit richer, but you can't have all 9 of those categories. So Marshall McLuhan is a theorist in communication, and he wrote his first book, Understanding Media, in '64. And later in the '60s, he wrote the book, The Global Village. And in the book, he talked about the impact of technology on communication. And he theorized that someday technology would allow all of us to be interconnected globally through technology. And he referred to that as the global village. Little did we know, Marshall was ahead of his time, and this would come to fruition. But there are other books that talk about the impact of technology now that we are connected globally. So the first one is a book we have in our own library, I Know Who You Are and I Saw What You Did, Social Networks and the Death of Privacy. Again, that permanence thing, right? These messages do not go away. But she dedicates the book to the people of Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube, and MySpace. May your data never be used against you. But she also talks about not only the millions of people that are using Facebook, and that's an underestimation compared to today of 750 million, but our digital identity and how our digital identity can differ from our physical identity. So we can ascribe an avatar or an image to our identities on our social media or even in texts that might not be aligned with our reality. Or maybe it's an image that we would ascribe to our personality or hope that we're viewed as. So our digital identity might overshadow our physical identity and who we really are face to face. 2.0, the breakup, disconnecting over social media. So new media has also impacted the way we disconnect from people or break up with people. And the book talks about the media as being part of the message, and this alludes back to Marshall McLuhan and his original work about the media is the message. But on Facebook, we can unfriend people, or we change our relationship status without maybe telling the person we're in a relationship with that we're over, but we've already changed our relationship status to the world on our Facebook account. And when we text to break up, that's a little bit strange because of the brevity and informality and sort of impersonal nature of breaking up over a text message. This is a quote that I found on the internet. Texting your friends who aren't there is cooler than merely talking to the ones that are there. And I started to process this quote, and it started to bother me. And when I look at students and groups of students on campus, it's a concern of mine because I'll see groups of students walking side by side or in the same physical location, but they all are texting people, other people that are not there physically. So their attention is to the person that they're texting who is not physically there. And that bothers me a little bit. And I think it's has a negative impact on the interpersonal communication because the person that you're with does not have your full attention and your attention is diverted. And if you're in a relationship with someone, and you're texting other people who aren't there, but still see that as time together, I'm not really sure that qualifies as time together if you're texting other people who are not physically there at that time. So whether you text, tweet, post on Facebook or Instagram rather than communicate face-to-face, it really is your choice. And the impact of this technology on interpersonal communication and your relationships is the great debate. But ultimately, it's up to you whether you choose to text or not. And so I thank you for listening. If you'd like to talk about it sometime, I'd love to meet with you and have this discussion. But I appreciate you listening to my opinions, and thanks for listening to the video today. Bye.